Now what we're going to do is we're going to take the sum of the deviations from the mean for a data set is always 0, what I just mentioned in the previous video. Now, for the deviations from the mean in table 12.13, if we added all of them together, we got 0, like I said. Now, this shows we can't find a measure of dispersion by just looking at the mean of the deviations because this value is going to be 0. So what we have to do is we have to use something called the standard deviation, and we have to compute that. And we do that by squaring each deviation, what we had up here, that negative 0.72, the negative 0.37, 0.9, 1.19. And then after we've done that, we introduce a square root into the computation, and we also have to do some division. So the whole way to compute that standard deviation is right here. So first, find the mean of the data items. We know how to do that. Then find the deviation from of each data item from the mean. We know how to do that. That's what this is. Now we square each deviation. So now we take this and we square it. That's pretty easy to do. Now we sum all those together. So we just sum that whole column. We can do that. Then we divide this value by n minus 1. So if we have 4, we're going to divide by 3. So we know how to do that. And then after that, we take the square root of that number, and that gives us our standard deviation. So it's just going to add a little bit to our table, but we can still do that. And uh, for standard deviation, we give it a symbol, and we give it the symbol S, and that's for the sample standard deviation. Now, if we were doing the population, it's going to be sigma. So it's a Greek letter, it's a lowercase, and we'd use sigma. But we're not, again, using populations, so we're just going to worry about little s, which is a sample standard deviation. And in format, it looks like this, the square root of the sum of the deviations squared divided by n minus 1. So what do we have to do for our table? Well, we still have our data item. We still have our deviation. Now we have to square that. Now, once we square that, we're going to add that column at the bottom. So then we're going to have a sum of that column. We'll plug that in there, divide by n minus 1, and then take the square root of it. And again, all this we can do with our calculator, so it's nothing that's super difficult to do. All right, so now what we have to do is we have to remember what we did on that previous example. Well, we're going to again pull in our x. We're going to pull in our x minus x bar. And then we're going to take x minus x bar and we're going to square it. So if we remember, we had a 2, we had a 4, we had a 7, and we had 11. This one gave us a minus 4, that gave us a minus 2, that gave us a 1, and that gave us a 5. Remember, if we add all those together, we get 0, so that doesn't help us. But if we square them and then add them together, then we can find the standard deviation. So a minus 4 times a minus 4 is a plus 16. Minus 2 times minus 2 is a 4. 1 times 1 is 1, and 5 times 5 is 25. So now what we're going to do is we're going to take the sum of those, and that's going to be equal, well, that's going to be 20, 45, 46. Okay. Now, they said standard deviation is equal to the square root of this sum, which is 46, divided by n, the 4, minus 1, so divided by 3. So that's all we have to do. Now, this was easy. We could do a lot of the math in our head, so we didn't have to do all of it in our head, but we still have to do that last calculation there. We have to find the square root of, and now we're going to take 46 divided by 3. Oops, hit the wrong button there. 3, and hit enter, and we get 3.9. I think it said to 2 decimal places, 2. So this gives us the standard deviation at 2 decimal places. So 3.92. Now it's roughly that. It's not exactly that because it had a lot more decimal places after that. And so that would be how we calculate the standard deviation. Now it's not hard, but it's a lot of little steps that we have to kind of follow. Now, let's look at how to do this on a calculator because our calculator will do it as well. So let's clear this out. Let's go to Stat. Let's go to Edit. So we'll want number 1. And now, depending on your calculator, what's in it already, you might have stuff in it. So if we go up here to the top L2, hit clear, arrow down, that clears all that out. Let's do the same thing here. Hit clear, arrow down. So now we've got a blank slate. So now what we can do is we can type in 2, then we can type in our 4, then we can type in our 7, and then we can type in our 11. So now we've got those four, and we're going to calculate stats. So we need to go over to this calc button, arrow over, and we just want the one variable stats. And our list is L1. If we had it and typed L2 or L4 or whatever, we would have to switch that, but we're doing L1. And here, that's our X bar. That's cool. And so then the thing we were looking for is this S of X, 3.9157, which rounds to 3.92. And so that's another way we can get our standard deviation. So if we wanted to check and see if we got it right, this would be a way to do it. Okay, so that's how we can use our calculator to do the same thing we did here with the standard deviation calculation. So we need to know it both ways in case, it says to do it the long way, we can do it the long way, we can get our value. And then if it says check it with your calculator, now we can do it checking with our calculator. All right, so let's stop there and come back for some more.